A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to the whole web of viewers out there and to the entire family of Nirmala College, faculty members, students, alumni, and to everyone who was intimately and inevitably connected to Nirmala. Welcome home. This day is certainly going to chisel out a golden page in the text of Nirmala as we are all awaiting the much awaited, eagerly longed for moment. A voice we truly wanted to listen to is going to be etched soon throughout in the vicinity of Nirmala Hills as Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of the Parliament, joins us today at this great Indian skull session on redefining the frontiers of digital democracy. Democracy is never easy to define. Therefore, it's not surprising that there are numerous definitions of digital democracy. Nirmala College, Muvattupuzha is delighted today to play the host to discuss so poignant a topic today. And let us wait a little more, just a little more, to listen to the original first-hand voice, wishing all our dear viewers a completely brilliant skull session. Let's open our brains, open up our minds, and listen to this voice. Good day.
I've had a couple of good programs in Muvattupuzha already. രാവിലെ നമ്മുടെ മാത്യു കുഴൽനാടൻ്റെ MLA ഓഫീസ് ഉദ്ഘാടനം ചെയ്തു. അത് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് there was also the 100 days celebration at the Nirmala School, and then at the Nirmala College we've had this Teachers Felicitation and Education Excellence Awards. അപ്പോൾ അവിടെ പ്രസംഗിച്ചിട്ടാണെന്ന് വേണ്ട, അപ്പോൾ പ്രസംഗമൊന്നും വേണ്ട. What I'll do is, whatever you want to ask about, we'll have a direct interaction. That's the most efficient thing, because I have to be moving towards Trivandrum in 20 minutes. So it's all very, very tight. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Just a brief introduction.
Very briefly, and then please listen. Don't introduce me, that they can find out off the internet. Introduce them and what you'd like to discuss today.
Most respected guest, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of the Parliament, Dr. Matthew Kudalnadan, MLA, Muvattupuzha Legislative Constituency, Dr. K.V. Thomas, Principal of Nirmala College, Professor Saji Joseph, Vice Principal, Reverend Father Francis Kannadan Bursa, Reverend Father Zacharias Kallidikil, Director, Nirmala Civil Service Academy, invitees, attendees of the program. Welcome to the great Indian skull session, an interactive juncture with a great Indian convened by Nirmala College, Muvattupuzha and Nirmala Civil Service Academy. Founded in 1953, Nirmala College has been one of the premier educational institutions in India, re-accredited by NAC with A++ grade in the 4th cycle of accreditation in 2021. We've always taken great privilege in being a part of the changing tides of the country, and this day is certainly going to be etched down in the history of Nirmala, as history is now her story too, when Nirmala receives a great Indian and even greater a human on our grounds. And today, this one person who constantly reminds himself and others that India matters to him and he would like to matter to India. So Nirmala feels wonderful as we play the host today to discuss, define and redefine the frontiers of digital democracy. And whom do we have with us today? Well, that makes my job all the more difficult, because how can I introduce someone who needs no introduction at all? But just a brief introduction still. Well, you can Google him up and you get a long list of epithets that Dr. Shashi Tharoor is a diplomat, a writer, a global leader. Tharoor is orator, writer, thesaurus. But all of them would be too skinny to describe him, because we can only pretend that we know this person. Because while some of him is Googleable, the major part or the major half remains ungoogleable. Sir, after listening to and reading your tongue, we often feel that you are the real passage to India, to the soul of India, who after years of living and learning abroad, came back to his roots because India mattered to him and he wanted to matter to India. The one who deliciously compared the pluralism and inclusiveness of India to a thali meal, the one who penned that dense read, the mashup of Mahabharata, a classic writing on the ever-time classics of India. He looks like a Prince Charming or one of those English princes from the fairy tales. He thinks like a cosmopolitan, but we believe he emotes and feels all Indian, absolute Indian. And we are so happy that Nirmala College has been making this tryst with destiny all these years and preparing us for this wonderful moment. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my ultimate pleasure to welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor, a great Indian, to the Great Indian Skull session. So let us commence the session real soon, seeking the blessings of the Omnipresent. I now request our principal, Dr. K.V. Thomas, to welcome our guest of honor, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, and all his listeners.
Honorable Member of Parliament and Chief Guest of the day, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, all other dignitaries of the diocese and on the diocese, students, teachers and well-wishers who are attending the live streaming of the program. A very good afternoon to one and all. Dr. Shashi Tharoor is a person who needs no introduction, both among the educated, the uneducated, political, apolitical, the young or the old. As we all know, Dr. Shashi Tharoor has been in the forefront, both politically and socially, fighting to uphold and protect our democracy. In many of his talk, he pointed out various threats to our democracy. He has a strong opinion that government has made mockery of democracy. He has also expressed his concern over citizens' data privacy, cyber security, including the recent Pegasus issues. He is the right person to interact on digital democracy. I am extremely happy and privileged to welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor for this program. Though our MLA, Dr. Matthew Kudelanadan is not here, he is the man behind this program. In his absence also, I welcome Dr. Matthew Kudelanadan. Also, I welcome all the dignitaries, Vice Principal, Barsar, Sakriya's father, all other dignitaries, students, and all well-wishers, those who are watching this program. Thank you all, to have a wonderful interaction.
Thank you, sir. So, dear students, this is the juncture where we start the interaction. Seize the chance and make the most of it. So, whom are we starting with? Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. എൻ്റെ പേര് അശ്വതി ഫ്രാൻസിസ്. ഞാൻ നിർമ്മല സിവിൽ സർവീസ് അക്കാഡമിയിലാണ് പഠിക്കുന്നത്. ആസ് എ പാർലമെന്റേറിയൻ എനിക്ക് സാറിനോടൊരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ചോദിക്കാനുള്ളത്, നമുക്കറിയാം പാർലമെന്റ് ഈസ് റിഗാർഡഡ് ആസ് ദ ടെമ്പിൾ ഓഫ് ഡെമോക്രസി. ഈ ടെമ്പിൾ ഓഫ് ഡെമോക്രസിയിൽ കഴിഞ്ഞ ഒരു മൺസൂൺ സെഷൻ നമ്മൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അലോക്കേറ്റ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന 96 അവേഴ്സിൽ 21 hours and 14 minutes ആണ് നമ്മൾ യൂട്ടിലൈസ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. വിച്ച് മീൻസ് ലോക്സഭ എന്ന് പറയുന്നതിൽ നിന്നുണ്ടായിരിക്കുന്ന പ്രൊഡക്ടിവിറ്റി 21%, രാജ്യസഭയിലുണ്ടായിരിക്കുന്ന പ്രൊഡക്ടിവിറ്റി 28%. ഹൗ ഫാർ താങ്കളുടെ അഭിപ്രായം അനുസരിച്ച് ഡെമോക്രസിയിൽ ഒരു ഡീജനറേഷൻ സംഭവിച്ചു കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണോ എന്നതാണ് എനിക്കറിയേണ്ടത്.
ഞാൻ നിങ്ങളൊപ്പം 100% യോജിപ്പാണ്. പക്ഷേ ഈ വിഷയത്തിൽ ഞാൻ പാർലമെൻറ്റിലൊരു ഒറ്റ ശബ്ദമാണെന്ന് പറയാൻ സാധിക്കും. കാരണം ഈ ഡിസ്റപ്ഷൻ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ആക്ടിവിറ്റി നമ്മളുടെ രാഷ്ട്രീയത്തിൽ 10-20 വർഷമായി കയറി കഴിഞ്ഞു. ഇതാദ്യം കൊണ്ടുവന്നത് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഭരിക്കുന്ന BJP ആണ്. അവർ ഇതുപോലെ ഒരു സെഷനല്ല 2-3 സെഷനെ കംപ്ലീറ്റ്ലി 0% പ്രൊഡക്ടിവിറ്റി ആയിട്ട് തകർത്തി. ഒരേ സമയത്ത് ആ കാലത്തെ ഇപ്പോൾ 2 പേരും അന്തരിച്ച് പോയിട്ടുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ആ കാലത്തെ ലീഡർ ഓഫ് ദി ഓപ്പോസിഷൻ സുഷമ സ്വരാജും അപ്പർ ഹൗസിലത്തെ ലീഡർ ഓഫ് ദി ഓപ്പോസിഷനായ അരുൺ ജെയ്റ്റ്ലിയും 2 പേരും ആർട്ടിക്കിൾ എഴുതി പറഞ്ഞു, ഡിസ്റപ്ഷൻ ഈസ് എ ലെജിറ്റിമേറ്റ് ഫോം ഓഫ് പാർലമെൻ്ററി ആക്ടിവിറ്റി. ആ വിശ്വാസത്തിൽ അവർ UPA സർക്കാർ ഭരിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് 2 പ്രാവശ്യം പാർലമെൻറ്റിനെ പ്രവർത്തിക്കാൻ തീരെ സമ്മതിച്ചില്ല. അപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളെല്ലാവരും ഗോൾഡൻ റൂൾ പഠിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടല്ലോ. ഗോൾഡൻ റൂൾ പഠിച്ചിട്ടില്ലേ? ഡു അൺടു അതേഴ്സ് ആസ് യു വുഡ് വിഷ് ദം ടു ഡു അൺടു പഠിച്ചിട്ടില്ലേ? ഇപ്പോൾ രാഷ്ട്രീയത്തിലൊരു പുതിയ ഗോൾഡൻ റൂളാണ് ഡു അൺടു അതേഴ്സ് വാട്ട് ദേ ഹാവ് ഡൺ അൺടു യു. അപ്പോൾ ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു വാശി ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ പ്രതിപക്ഷം, ആ സമയത്ത് ഭരിക്കേണ്ടായിരുന്ന പ്രതിപക്ഷം, അവർ പറയുന്നു ഞങ്ങൾ ഭരിക്കാൻ ശ്രമിച്ചപ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെ പെരുമാറി ഇവർ ഭരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഞങ്ങളൊരു പാഠം പഠിപ്പിക്കട്ടെ. ഇതാണ് രാഷ്ട്രീയം. അപ്പം ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, നോക്കൂ, ഞാൻ ബഹളമുണ്ടാക്കാനല്ല ഇലക്ഷൻ ജയിച്ച് വന്നിരിക്കുകയാണ് പാർലമെൻറ്റിൽ, എനിക്ക് സംസാരിക്കണം. ഇത് എൻ്റെ അഭിപ്രായത്തിൽ പ്രതിപക്ഷത്തിനും ഈ വിഷയങ്ങളൊക്കെ ജനങ്ങളുടെ മുന്നോട്ട് വയ്ക്കാൻ ഗുണം ചെയ്യുന്ന ഒരു കാര്യമാണെന്ന്. പക്ഷേ ഇതല്ല രാഷ്ട്രീയത്തിൽ ജനങ്ങളുടെ വിശ്വാസം. ഇപ്പോൾ ആൾക്കാർ പറയണത് ആൾക്കാർ പാർലമെൻറ്റിൽ കാണേണ്ടത് അവരുടെ വിഷയങ്ങൾക്ക് പ്രാധാന്യം കൊടുക്കണം. അത് സർക്കാർ അവരുടെ വിഷയങ്ങളെ കുറിച്ച് ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ തയ്യാറല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ ഓപ്പോസിഷൻ ബഹളമുണ്ടാക്കിയാലേ അത് ഭാരതം അറിയപ്പെടുള്ളൂ. അതാണ് അവരുടെ വിശ്വാസം. ഇതിൽ അഭിപ്രായ വ്യത്യാസമുണ്ട്, ഞാൻ നിങ്ങളോട് ഒളിക്കുന്നില്ല. എൻ്റെ അഭിപ്രായം വേറെയാണ്. അത് പിന്നെ ഞാൻ 2-3 പ്രാവശ്യം പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ ഞാൻ ഒരു വ്യക്തിയായ കാരണം അതല്ല ഭൂരിപക്ഷത്തിൻ്റെ തീരുമാനം. അപ്പോൾ ഓപ്പോസിഷൻ എന്തായാലും ഈ തവണ നിങ്ങൾ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ പാർലമെൻറ്റിനെ നടത്താൻ സമ്മതിച്ചില്ല. ഈ താങ്കൾ പറഞ്ഞ ചില മണിക്കൂറുകളും കൂടി ശരിക്കുള്ള പാർലമെൻറ്റ് ഫങ്ഷനിങ് ആയിരുന്നില്ല. ഒരു ചർച്ചയോ ഒരു ഡിബേറ്റ് ഒന്നും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല. അവരുടെ ബില്ലിനെ കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നു, ബഹളം ഉണ്ടാവുന്നു, ആ ബഹളത്തിൻ്റെ ഇടയിൽ കൂടി അവർ മൈക്കിൽ സംസാരിച്ചിട്ട് പാസ്സാക്കുന്നു. ഇതെല്ലാം ജനാധിപത്യം, ഇതെല്ലാം ലെജിസ്ലേഷൻ, ഇതെല്ലാം പാർലമെൻറ്റ്, ഇതെല്ലാം വലിയൊരു തെറ്റാണ് സംഭവിച്ചതൊക്കെ. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പ്രതിപക്ഷത്തോട് ചോദിച്ചാൽ എന്തുകൊണ്ട് ഇങ്ങനെ ചെയ്യണം, അവർ പറയും സർക്കാരിൻ്റെ തെറ്റാണ്. സർക്കാർ ഞങ്ങൾ ആവശ്യപ്പെടുന്ന വിഷയങ്ങൾ, പെഗസസ് സ്നൂപ്പിംഗ് സ്കാൻഡൽ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ കോവിഡിൻ്റെ മിസ്മാനേജ്മെൻറ്റ്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ത്യ ചൈന ബോർഡർ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫാം ലോസ്, കർഷകരുടെ വിഷയം, ഇതൊന്നും ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ തയ്യാറല്ല. അവരുടെ വിഷയങ്ങൾ മാത്രം കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് അവർ പാസ്സാക്കാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്ന ബില്ലുകൾ മാത്രം പാസ്സാക്കാൻ വരുമ്പോൾ ഞങ്ങൾ എന്തിനാണ് അവരൊപ്പം സഹകരിക്കുന്നതാണ് പ്രതിപക്ഷത്തിൻ്റെ മറുപടി. അപ്പോൾ ഇതിനെ നന്നാക്കണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, താങ്കൾ ഉദ്ദേശിച്ച പോലെ നല്ലൊരു പ്രൊഡക്ടിവിറ്റി വേണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ സർക്കാരും പ്രതിപക്ഷവും കൂടി ഒരുമിച്ചിട്ട് പാർലമെൻറ്റിൻ്റെ പ്രോഗ്രാം ഉണ്ടാക്കണം. പല ജനാധിപത്യ രാജ്യങ്ങളിൽ ആഴ്ചയിലത്തെ 5 ദിവസത്തിലത്തെ ഒരു ദിവസം ഓപ്പോസിഷനാണ് അജണ്ട സെറ്റ് ചെയ്യുക. അപ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള ബഹളം വരാൻ ആവശ്യമില്ല. കാരണം പ്രതിപക്ഷത്തിനോട് പറയാം, ശരി, നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇഷ്ടം പോലെയുള്ള വിഷയങ്ങൾ നിങ്ങൾ വെള്ളിയാഴ്ച കൊണ്ടുവന്നോളൂ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വ്യാഴാഴ്ച കൊണ്ടുവന്നോളൂ. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് തരാൻ പോകുന്ന ഒരു ദിനം, ആ ദിനം നിങ്ങളുടെയാണ്, നിങ്ങൾ ഇഷ്ടം പോലെ റേസ് ചെയ്തോളൂ. മറ്റേ ദിനങ്ങൾ സർക്കാർ അവർ ജോലി ചെയ്യട്ടെ, സർക്കാർ തിരഞ്ഞെടുപ്പ് ജയിച്ച് വന്നതാണ്, ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് അവകാശമുണ്ടെന്ന് ചെയ്യാൻ ഞങ്ങൾ ചെയ്യട്ടെ. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു അക്കോമഡേഷൻ വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ എൻ്റെ അഭിപ്രായത്തിൽ നന്നായി നടക്കാം. പക്ഷെ അത് ചെയ്യാനും സർക്കാർ തയ്യാറല്ല. സർക്കാരിന് പ്രതിപക്ഷം കൊണ്ടുവരുന്ന വിഷയങ്ങൾ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാൻ തീരെ താല്പര്യമില്ലെങ്കിൽ പ്രതിപക്ഷം പറയും ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് എന്താ ഓൾട്ടർനേറ്റീവ്, ഞങ്ങൾ ഇതന്നെ ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കുള്ളൂ. അതാണ് വിഷയം. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഇങ്ങനെ പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടാവുന്നത്. ഐ ഡോണ്ട് അപ്രൂവ് ഓഫ് ഇറ്റ്, ബട്ട് ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ദ റിയാലിറ്റി ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യൻ പോളിറ്റിക്സ് സിൻസ് ബിഫോർ ഐ കെയിം ഇൻ ടു പോളിറ്റിക്സ്. ഞാനൊരു രാഷ്ട്രീയക്കാരനായിട്ടും MP ആയിട്ടും 12.5 വർഷമേ ആയിട്ടുള്ളൂ. ഇതൊരു 10-20 വർഷമേ നടക്കുന്നൊരു കാര്യമാണ്.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Aishwarya Lakshmi S. and
Hi.
I am a student, a BSc, second year BSc Physics student.
Right.
So my question is very simple. What's wrong with India's democracy today?
Oh my God, I've written an entire book on some of those issues, so I can't give you a short answer. I would say the principal problems in our democracy would include, it's not a comprehensive list because there's no time for one, would include, first of all, that democracy is being reduced to the process of just electing leaders and not asking the question as to what is the content of democracy between elections. Now, when you speak about democracy, it is not only about elections. An election is an event. Democracy is a process. And it's an ongoing process that must function all 5 years between elections. And it includes, above all, accountability of the government to the people who have elected them to be there. And it involves a certain amount of transparency. I say a certain amount because some things every government is allowed to keep secret. But transparency, particularly on financial matters, on how the taxpayers' money is being spent, transparency on the intent of the government to do certain things. The passing of legislation, for example, should normally involve extensive consultation, discussion and debate before a law is passed. And finally, there needs to be a process within democracy of institutionalization of practices. So when Jawaharlal Nehru was our first Prime Minister, he came to power at a time when we had 200 years of colonial rule, where whatever the British decided was it. But he decided we had to create democratic institutions, and the only way to give these institutions meaning when they had not existed before was to show them a respect they had not yet earned. So that, for example, he would oblige his cabinet and he himself would attend Parliament full time to show that Parliament mattered, the opposition's views mattered. The opposition was numerically even smaller than it is today, but he wanted to show that in a democracy their views must be heard and respected. So He would attend every time Parliament was in session, he was there full time. Unlike Mr. Modi, who barely arrives, for an hour in an entire session, even when there is no disruption. Secondly, he would show respect, for example, to the judiciary. He would show respect to the president and the vice president. All of which was to show that institutions are more important than individuals. Now, what has happened, unfortunately, is that the institutions that have been built up over 70 years have been hollowed out by the present government in such a way that the autonomy and freedom that many of these institutions had enjoyed and which gave them their credibility has been under severe strain, and in some cases has broken down. And when I speak of institutions, I mean the Election Commission. Increasingly is seen as a body that does what the government wants it to do. The judiciary is by and large still seen as the only hope, but there have still been a number of actions and judgments that have questioned it, including a former Chief Justice accepting a position of a Rajya Sabha MP on the part of the ruling party. The Reserve Bank of India was supposed to be autonomous, make its own decisions, but 2 governors have resigned because of pressure from the government. The individual institutions like this, Information Commission, for example, under the Right to Information Act, the government has taken over the power to determine the terms of office of the commissioners and their salaries, and has deliberately kept so many positions vacant that there is a backlog of over 2 lakh RTI applications in the country. And so on and so forth. I can give you more examples. I've written about this. If you Google my article, if you just Google my name and institutions, you'll see my concerns. So with all of this happening, the institution building in democracy is not there. Transparency and accountability is not there, as we were saying earlier to the young lady, when there is, for example, something like the snooping on people's opposition leaders' phones and the government refuses to discuss it. That's not democracy and transparency. In every other democracy, it's been discussed. In India, not. And at the same time, the question of accountability to the people has been completely pushed aside, except during elections. So during elections, they will come and say, we've done all these wonderful things, vote for us. And because there hasn't been a process of ongoing questioning over the last 5 years, we have a Prime Minister, for example, who has never given an interview or held a press conference, other than a scripted one. On no serious question has he been in 12 years. It's an unknown phenomenon in any democracy where democratic leaders are always interviewed. So you're looking at a situation that the things are therefore pretty bad. And the fourth estate, the media, which is supposed to be in many ways what holds up a mirror to society, what shows how society is functioning, the media has been in many ways disempowered by severe government pressure, income tax raids, enforcement directorate raids, cases being slapped on people and so on, with the result that about the only independent voices left are in the digital space and not in the mainstream media. Yeah.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. So my question is related to the article you have written in the Hindu, the China Deng Xiaoping has envisioned. So the recent developments in the Galwan Valley, and do you think that this is the first hardline stance that China has taken since 1975 towards India, and do you think China has cornered India? And the second part to my question is, how dependent are we on China because of trade and commerce, and how much will this influence the implementation of 5G technology in India? Thank you.
Right. Well, I mean, there's no question it's not the first time, because there have been other incidents. There's a famous incident called Sendorong Chu in the late 80s, where the Chinese similarly came forward, took some positions. There was no killing, no shooting, but they would not withdraw for 8-9 months. It went on for a long time. Then there was the Doklam incident a couple of years ago, 2017, and the Doklam Plateau, the Chinese took a position which is only useful to them in the event of war. You see, we have a very narrow strip of land known as the Chicken's Neck that connects West Bengal to the northeast. That Chicken's Neck passes through the town of Siliguri, and in a map it's a very narrow strip of territory. The Doklam Plateau overlooks that territory. So it's only useful, there's nothing else there other than grass or ice in the winter. But the Chinese, if they were there, they could shell, they could fire down on Indians, Indian traffic, Indian troops and so on that narrow road and cut that territory off, thereby completely isolating the northeast. If they wanted in a future war to march into the northeast, they would be able to cut mainland India off from the northeast by doing such a thing. So obviously India was concerned about this, and again there were extensive negotiations that resulted in the Chinese withdrawing from that position. But rather ominously, how can I show it to you? Imagine this is the Doklam Plateau. So the Chinese are here and our India is here. This is Bhutan. Okay. Now the Chinese suddenly came down here, heading towards the place where they could overlook our road. The Indians spotted this and they came here and they stopped the Chinese here. There was a standoff for 6-7 months. Finally, after negotiation, the Chinese withdrew. And India, unfortunately, with the fondness of Mr. Modi's government for PR, he announced, oh, great victory, diplomatic win for India and so on. What did the Chinese do quietly? They went back and they built a road this way. So they've ended up where they wanted to be, but not near India. They've gone the other side of Bhutan because they don't care about Bhutan. They can take territory elsewhere. So we have actually seen the Chinese are definitely doing what they want to do. They're pushing the LAC and they're trying to change the lines of the LAC in the course of these various pushes. But you're right, India is somewhat dependent, not just trade alone, which frankly, you know, you can buy from other countries what you're buying from China, by and large. But there are some things that are not easily replaceable. For example, a lot of the machines that India imports in order to make items, the machines come from China. So that if you suddenly cut the Chinese exports of those machines, I mean imports from China of those machines, then you are actually affecting all your industry's ability to manufacture things, including things for export. Secondly, if you want pharmaceuticals, we are a world leader in pharmaceutical industry, but the ingredients to make pharmaceuticals and the chemicals very often come from China. So again, you can't just cut that off. There are a number of other examples that economists can tell you. So it would be counterproductive for India to suddenly cut trade with China. And yet there is no doubt that what the Chinese are doing to us is worrying and should be worrying. And there's no question that we are looking at a very tense and unfortunate situation with China right now. Last question. I'm really sorry because we are running so late, I really have to go. Go ahead. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Devananda KV and I am a second year BA Communicative English student.
Okay.
So, India enjoys the largest democracy in the world and we have been proud since it became the system of our government. But the public's part in the democracy has been dwindled to a very few days of election. After that, we are supposed to sit back and enjoy the show, sometimes painfully. So, do you think that the right to recall will be a panacea for this misery?
Not really, because that doesn't so much work in our system, because we are a system that is somewhat fragmented. There are a lot of political parties in India. So very, very few MPs actually win with a majority of over 50%. I must have won almost a record majority and I only got 43% of the vote because there's a strong BJP candidate who came second, a strong communist candidate who came third, and then about 10 smaller candidates who got some votes. So in theory, 90% of your parliament can be recalled because none of them got 50% plus. So recall is a very irresponsible thing in many ways. And I think it also misplaces the responsibility for the failure of our democracy. I'll give you one example. The recall concept works for those individuals exercising executive power who are directly elected to exercise that power and who have the authority and often the budgetary resources to do it. And if they don't do a good job, you can recall them, that makes sense. But an MP in India, our government is formed by electing legislators, right? If you get a majority, then from these legislators, a government is formed. The problem with that is, number one, once the government is formed, the legislators who constitute the majority that have created that government become a rubber stamp. They have no autonomy. You cannot blame somebody for a particular vote because that vote they had no choice but to give. They have to give that vote because the party has issued a whip, and according to the whip they have to vote. So it's a system made worse by the anti-defection law, that if you vote against that whip, against your party's whip, you can be expelled from parliament. So the result is that the legislature, the individual MP is not the one responsible for any failures of the government. And unless you can actually recall a majority of the MPs who have put that government forward, which will not be a practical proposition, you cannot, I think, use the recall in a fair and sensible way. I honestly think that the more sensible way would be to rethink some of our systems, so that's a larger conversation. I have been a very big fan of the presidential system rather than the parliamentary system. I've explained it in a number of articles. In my book, India Shastra, there's a lengthy essay. There's a slightly earlier version in Tehelka magazine, which you can Google. I think their title was, "Shall We Call the President?" or something. So if you Google it, you'll see. And when I say presidential, I don't just mean a president in Delhi. I mean directly elected chief executives at all levels. Directly elect your mayor. Give the mayor the budget, the authority to be accountable. Then you can hold them accountable. Directly elect your state leader, chief minister, governor, whatever you call him. Directly elect your chief executive of the center. I am a firm believer in that, and I've given my arguments and my reasons for which there isn't time today. But as long as you have this British perversion called the parliamentary system, which we are stuck with, then we will have to live with these flaws. And while many of you are frustrated and you say this is not democratic enough, or there's meaningless disruption, or that those who are elected to legislate actually form the executive and then they have no role in legislation. The executive, which usually means a bureaucrat, will write the legislation, bring it to parliament, and they'll all vote for it. It's really a bad system that we've got. Democracy is indispensable, but the kind of democracy we've got, we can certainly seriously question. I've been questioning it, but once again, on this also, I'm a lone voice. Anyway, thank you all very much. I know there are many others who would have liked to have spoken. I truly apologize. I'm completely stuck. I have no other opportunity. I think my political friends had too ambitious a program earlier today, and this was all supposed to happen between 11 and 1, and I was supposed to join you around 1 o'clock. But by the time I got to you, it was so late that I'm afraid, I think it's already 2. It's past 2, 10 past 2. So please forgive me. I wish you all the very best, and I wish you all success in your academics, and for those of you who want to join the civil service in doing that. Maybe if you join the civil service, we'll see each other in Delhi when you're there. Okay, thanks very much. Jai Hind.
Nirmala Civil Service Academy students has prepared a small hand-drawn gift for you, sir. I would kindly request the students to hand over the gift and Dr. Shashi Tharoor to receive the gift.
Oh, wow. Oh, nice. Come. Oh, wow. Take a look. Marvelous. Very nice. Oh, my mother will be very happy to see this.
Our favorite word.
Voracious vocabulary, I remember that.
In fact, I wanted to request for a word from Muvattupuzha. Students are
Mesmerizing, there you are. They've given you the word. Okay. Mesmerizing Muvattupuzha, that can be your slogan. Okay.
So not it is given for you.
Okay, I will look at it more carefully later, but very beautiful.
Mesmerizing Muvattupuzha.
Well, I'm sure they'll do better than me. Why should they be content with just being like me?